Welcome to Empowered by Iron, the podcast for female strength athletes by female strength athletes. We are your hosts, Dr. Kristin Lander from Fiercely Fueled Nutrition Coaching and Dr. Mary Morton, scientist and weightlifter. Together, we are Empowered by Iron. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Empowered by Iron. This week, we are just getting advanced up in here.
Hell yeah.
Notice we're not washed out here in the background. For those of you watching on YouTube, for those of you who are just listening on the audio version, never mind, doesn't matter to you. But we wanted to start this specific podcast off. We're going to talk about strength gains and how they don't happen overnight, with a little story time that is quite mortifying. But I'm sure most of you listening have experienced some type of something of this.
Yeah. So what's up, Mary? How's it going?
Hey, Kristin, can you tell people why you are qualified to be a personal trainer?
This is really funny. We haven't talked about stupid things that have been said to us in the gym in a while. I feel like we did a whole episode on this one time. So yep, it's story time. So Stacy came up to train with me. Well, she came up to hang out with us.
Yeah.
And we went to my new gym and we're talking to the owners before we got started training. And one of the guys who works there is an older guy and was telling Stacy that I would make a really good personal trainer because I have a big butt.
Okay, so here, yes. Like that's exactly what happened. But the way that he did it is he said, Kristin, turn to the side.
Oh, right.
And then pointed at your butt. Like he didn't just say because you have a big butt, he objectified you in front of everyone.
He did. I didn't know what was going to happen. So he was saying, Kristin, he was telling Stacy, Kristin would make a really good personal trainer. And he was like, wait, Kristin, can you just turn to the side for us for a second? And I was like, okay. He's like, just turn and face that way. I didn't know what he was going to do. And then he pointed to my butt and he was like, see that there? That she'll make a good personal trainer. And I laughed it off. This person has made numerous comments to me that I'm just like, okay, whatever. I just laughed it off because sometimes it's easier to just say in your head, you're stupid than to give it any of your energy, right? Stacy comes in.
She went mother hen.
She's so nice, though. She was so nice about it. She said, yeah, you know what? I do think that Kristin would make a great personal trainer, but more so because of what's in her head and the knowledge that she has.
Voices.
The voices. The crazy
the
in her head.
Anxiety, that's what makes you a good personal trainer.
Anyway, so it was really funny. So apparently all that you need to be a good personal trainer is a big butt. Mm-hmm. And that's all that matters.
Or the illusion of being lean. My husband and I talk about this a lot, just because it's the industry you and I are in. We talk about how there are so many people who are 0% qualified to do anything. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that people take them seriously is because they look the part. And it may come from a lot of training, which, kudos to them. But normally a lot of those people come from, they were small and lean to begin with, or they were just lean naturally. It's called an ectomorph, right?
Yeah.
And they just put on a little bit of muscle and they stay lean. And then, boom, you look like you have trained really hard and dieted really hard and you know what you're talking about, but really just kind of how you look.
Right.
And someone like me who's never that, I can look at a piece of chocolate cake and like take on the calories. Like, if I'm not careful,
gain 5 pounds.
I will just keep expanding.
Yeah.
And to see someone like that, in my mind, I was always like, oh, they know what they're doing. I'm going to listen to them. When in reality, that's not necessarily true.
Well, we talk about this with reading research articles, right? Like who were the participants of the study, of the research study? You need to make sure that it applies to you. So just because someone looks lean and they look the part doesn't necessarily mean that they know anything about strength. Like, we are strength athletes, right? Doesn't mean that they know how to be really strong and how to get really strong and how to eat to be really strong. It doesn't mean that they know anything about they might know about losing weight and gaining weight, but they don't necessarily know how to do that and staying within a weight class or moving out of weight classes. How do you know when to go up? How do you know when to go down? They don't necessarily know any of that stuff, and it's so frustrating.
Well, that's what makes Empowered by Iron and Female Strength Academy so special, is that we are not here to get you abs. Like, if you have abs, that's great. If you want
abs, we can help you get abs.
But our main purpose is, you want a bigger total, we're going to get you a bigger total. You want to be stronger, we're going to teach you how to be strong. And that's comes from two people who have learned how to get strong. And do I necessarily look the part? No, I've never approached at the gym and been like, wow, you look like you could be a bodybuilder. Like, I've never approached the way that Kristin is approached. It's just an observation, because Kristin has a very jacked upper body.
And I'm naturally that way.
That's
like, I've
just
always
how
been
you
that
are.
way. My dad is that way. My brother's that way. They don't even lift, and they have jacked upper bodies. Like that.
And I don't. And
right.
so when I'm wearing a tank top, it doesn't really look like I lift like Kristin does. So I don't, not to take away from your gains, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't get approached to say that, like, oh, you look like you lift, even though I do lift quite a bit.
Right. Which brings me to another thing that happened at the gym that day. So he was training 2 female clients, and he came up and said, hey, we have some questions for you. And I, okay, you know what, like, I'm in the middle of training, but okay, just trying to be nice. And he said, we all collectively would like to know I can't remember exactly what he said. How heavy should they be lifting? Or how many reps?
I think they said something along the lines of, because I was eavesdropping, it's what I do. I think they said something along the lines of, we want your legs, like, we want.
Well, that's what
like
it came to. He said, how heavy should they be lifting? And I said, well, that's dependent upon the intended purpose. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And because you can't just answer that question. No. So he said, well, they would like to have your lower body. And I said, okay. And Stacy and I talked about this in the car on the way home too, is like, the way I look is a accumulation of all of the things that I've done. Right. Yes. And I've rarely ever trained for aesthetics, except for in my late teens and early 20s, because that's all I knew about.
Yeah.
So everything else I've done is like performance based. So I did say, I'm like, well, you're going to have to lift heavy. Number one, you don't get to look like me without looking heavy. But the way I look is a byproduct of how I train. It's not the intended purpose. I don't train to look like this. I look like this because of how I train.
Right.
And so then we went into like, what is hypertrophy versus strength versus muscle endurance and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But
well, and also you've been training 20 years.
Right. That's the other thing, which leads into today's episode, is that,
wow, how convenient.
Strength gains don't happen overnight. Your body is not going to change overnight. It's super funny. I was looking back at old baby weightlifter videos, baby Kristin weightlifter videos, where I was super tiny and had no legs.
Skeletor.
How did I think I was going to lift heavy weight? I mean, I did okay for my size, but there came a point in which I had to eat more and get stronger and put on weight. Yeah. And now, hey, guess what? I finally have quads for the first, I'm almost 39 and I have quads for like the first time in my life.
That's amazing. Well, when you first started to cut, it's because you moved down here and you got a little uncomfortable. So for your initial reason to start cutting, right, was because you were a little uncomfortable.
I had undergone like a year period of time that was business-wise incredibly stressful, and then picked up, moved my life, sold a business, picked up, moved my life, started a new business. My health and fitness and strength was on the back burner for about a year. And there was a lot of eating chips and drinking alcohol in that period of time too. So yeah, I had to get healthy again.
So she started that, and then once you were like, oh, I need to get strong. Here we are.
Eat more food to get strong.
No more longer. A 63 kilo lifter.
I will never be a 63 kilo lifter ever again.
So let's jump into this. So let's talk about how strength gains don't happen overnight, which can be a little frustrating for some of us who follow people on social media or who really want to hit certain PRs. So let's talk about this. The first thing we need to do is we need to break it down based on time you've been lifting. You heard Kristin say she's been lifting for 20 years, heavy. I've probably been lifting heavy specifically for 5 years. I did a lot of aesthetic training before. Not that it wasn't heavy, but it wasn't focused on being strength and heavy.
Right.
And so let's break it down. Let's start with beginner gains. So,
beginner gains, the best
the
gains.
magical portion of lifting. If you're just into lifting, be prepared for a wild ride that ends in a plateau. But we'll get to that in a second. So beginner gains can be classified as if you're new to lifting, which means less than about 6 months. Sometimes, depending on the person, beginner gains can last up to a year. But 6 months seems to be about where we see it kind of break off and plateau.
Right. So beginner gains, like you're putting on crazy amounts of strengths, like 20-pound PRs, like on the regular.
Mm-hmm. Lots of PRs. You'll notice that your body starts to change. If you go from doing nothing, sitting on the couch, to lifting weights, you're going to notice you're going to put on muscle. That muscle burns fat. You're going to see your body change just simply by picking up a barbell and lifting heavy. Yep. And you could even experience some weight loss. Like that's not unheard of, especially if you go from nothing to something.
And there may be a period of time where you have weight gain because you're putting on muscle and eating maybe at maintenance, and you might put on or more, right? If you have not dialed in your nutrition yet, you may be eating more food than you need. And you could potentially either your weight could go up or down.
This is why when people say they don't want to do their first meet until they've reached a certain amount, I thought that's so silly. Get in when you're young and early, not young, but young to lifting.
Yeah, when you're still a newbie lifter.
When you're a brand new lifter, get in, get your first meet in, and then get your second meet in. And you're going to, just being at a meet, first of all, is just like this magical experience of energy and adrenaline, and you're going to hit numbers you wouldn't hit in the gym. And if you are new to lifting, the next meet you do is going to be just that much more because you're just putting on beginner gains. You're going from zero training of your muscles to your muscles rapidly adapting to all this stimulus you're putting on it, and you're going to see some crazy increases in strength. Right. So if you are waiting to do your first meet until you're quote unquote hitting numbers or ready, you're being silly. Just go do it.
Yeah, just go do it. Hey, that makes me, I always tell people, like, no one is paying as much attention as you think. So a lot of people.
In everything, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people think like, oh, I don't want to go to this meet because I'm going to be like last place, or I'm not, my numbers aren't impressive or whatever. Literally, no one notices. There's no one that waves a flag over your head and says, this person was last place. No one knows.
Newbie here.
If you're not first, second, or third, like if you didn't podium, no one knows what your total was. So,
and usually the people who do podium, if you don't podium, the people who are going to be first, second, third, they are just going to support you regardless.
Absolutely.
You say, this is my first or second meet, and they're like, hell yeah, girl, hop on my barbell. I'll help you. You can work with me. You can work in with them. Like, there's no one looking at you being like, newbie, I'm going to outlift her. Because people who are, I had a talk with Stacy when she was here, and we said people who aren't confident in themselves and don't have something in themselves that makes them, that gives them worth. So they're not confident. They will look at other people, and that's when they'll judge. They'll look at other people and they'll say, well, their PRs are not that impressive, but that's just a reflection of them and not a reflection of you. And it rarely happens in the powerlifting or weightlifting scene.
Right. And if it does, you don't want those people in your life anyway, so fuck them. Who cares?
Yeah, get them out. So then once you get about 6 months or even up to a year, you'll start to notice that and this is of consistent lifting. This isn't like hit it for a month and then leave and then hit it for a month.
Right.
This is 6 months of consistently lifting heavy. You're going to see that your PRs are going to kind of taper off.
Yeah.
You're going to have some smaller and less frequent PRs, which is such a bummer.
It is. This is the part that's like you get into it and it's like, oh, okay. But now by the time this happens, you're already hooked. You can't go back. You're addicted. And so it becomes about thinking about things other than just PRs. Like, how are you improving in the sport mentally? How is your life improving because of lifting?
What about your
How is your technique improving? That's huge. People fail to realize. They're like, oh man, I haven't PR'd my squat in 5 months, but like maybe their technique is so much better, or maybe they're able to finally do it without back pain, or maybe they're able to hit that same 1 rep max that they've had for a while, but it looks so much easier, you know, it feels so much easier. So like there's all of these things that are happening besides just the actual PRs that are progress, but we get so focused on the PRs that we're like, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah. And so when you go from like your first or second meet and you're hitting that year mark and you think you're going to add 20 pounds onto each lift, you're going to be very disappointed. And that mental transition from being able to PR 10 to 20 pounds each time is rough.
Sure.
It's rough.
It is. You have to be prepared for it.
Especially if you put a lot of emphasis on the numbers.
Right. You have to be prepared for it. And that is why I think not putting the emphasis on the numbers, controlling every other part of your training and recovery that you can. I mean, that's just a mindset shift that I had to make recently, was because I do tend to get really focused on the numbers, and I know that's not healthy for me. So I have to back up. Like, I was just telling Stacy, I don't actually even know what I totaled at my last meet. I had to look it up in order to register for my next meet because it was a qualifier. Like, I didn't even know what I totaled. I don't know what I opened at. I don't know what I have no idea, because it doesn't matter. Number one, it's not enough. For me, it's never going to be enough. So it's not enough. It was also my first time lifting down at 148, which we decided was not a good idea.
Bueno.
We didn't know until we tried, and we decided it's not where I belong. So anyway, not getting caught up on the numbers and looking for other things, like, you know, don't miss training days. Make sure you're doing all your work. Look for increases in strength in your accessory work, things like that.
Challenge yourself in other ways that aren't just putting 10 pounds on your squat or your deadlift or your bench or your clean and jerk or your snatch. Like some of the technical advances you make will be the reason you hit PRs. Like, if you have a shitty snatch technique, you're going to be limited just based on your shitty snatch technique. And if you can take some time and go a little lighter and hit the accessories heavy and get your technique right on the snatch or the clean and jerk or the deadlift or the bench or whatever, those technical advances are going to carry over and help you get 5-pound PRs, which for us, 5-pound PR is amazing.
Oh, for sure.
If I can put 5 pounds on in my clean and jerk, elated.
Yeah.
Take it any day. Yeah. You know?
I was just looking back at some of my old Olympic weightlifting training videos. And I remember when I made the switch from Olympic weightlifting to powerlifting, I had to make that decision because I couldn't train both at the level that I wanted to train. And so I remember feeling disappointed in my lifting in Olympic weightlifting at the time. And I go back and I look at old videos versus like my most recent videos of training. And I did get stronger, but it wasn't enough. And I'm like, wow, I had such huge technique improvements, and I want to punch myself for being for that feeling of like that constant disappointment that it wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough. So give yourself credit for improving in other ways. Don't beat yourself up about numbers that feel like they have stalled out.
Yeah, because they're supposed to kind of stall out.
Yeah. And
it's just pushing your body ever so much over the edge is going to get you that extra pound or extra 3 pounds.
But also don't use it as an excuse to not reach the levels that you're capable of reaching, because we can all accomplish way more than we think we can. And so don't use that like, oh, well, my newbie gains have worn off, so whatever. It just like keep trying and keep expecting that you're going to do better. Just know that it's not going to be a 20-pound PR every time you test your maxes, unless you're only testing your maxes once a year.
There was a great quote for those of you who are watching. I'm pulled out my phone because I wanted to pull this up. Let's see. Catalyst Athletics, for those who don't follow, they're great for Olympic weightlifters. Here's a quote that they said that I thought just fits perfectly. It said, "There are absolute physical limits to what a body can do. The strength of your mind determines how close to those limits you can reach."
So true.
So true, so powerful.
So true. And I also, when I remember I actually saw that, and my initial reaction was, fuck that. I refuse to admit that there are physical limitations.
That's typical Kristin.
But at the same time, I realize our physical limitations are way higher than what we think they are.
Yes,
and it's our minds
it's
that
minds.
hold us back.
Yeah.
It is our minds that hold us back. And I think that if we put our minds to doing something, we can push our bodies a lot further than what we really think we can do.
Yeah. So maybe even meditate.
I am a huge fan of meditation. I meditate every single day. I write down my goals every single day.
There you go.
Physically write it down by hand.
You heard it here,
It's
folks.
huge.
That's how you become.
Visualization.
That's how you become an elite powerlifter.
Visualization. When Stacy sends me my programming on Sunday nights, I look at it, I fall asleep visualizing those lifts. We can talk about this another time because I could go on about visualization for a long time. But there are other ways to improve is the point. It's not just hitting PRs.
Yep. So here are some things you can do to optimize your strength gains once you should be doing this as a beginner, but they're not going to become as apparent that you need to do them.
Once you make that transition from beginner lifter to intermediate lifter, you're suddenly going to start looking for all of these other little things that can make a little tiny difference. Because when we're talking about, especially when we're talking about at the elite level, if meditating daily, visualizing, having your nutrition on point, your sleep on point, if all of those things collectively can give you an extra 3 to 5%, that's huge. That's the difference between first place medal and third place medal at an international meet. That's it. So once you reach that intermediate level is when it really starts becoming apparent. Like, I need to dial some other things back in. And
So one of the first things that I think a lot of us are guilty of is we feel the need to do extra, to overdo. When you are a beginner, it's hard to overdo it because your body is it is on fire to adapt to what you're doing. If you are new to lifting, as long as you're not like lifting twice a day, 7 days a week, your body really can adapt very well. But once you've reached the point at which you kind of pushed your body as far as it can adapt and you really need to just do a little extra to get it to that next level, you don't want to overdo it. If your program says like you need to do 3x2 at 50% and you're like, wow, that was easy, I'm going to do 3x2 at 80%.
No, there's a reason it said 50%.
There's a reason.
Yeah.
If the program's well written, the whole thing is looking to keep your intensity and your volume controlled. So if you are trying to push it, you may be suffering the consequences by basically under recovering yourself for the next couple weeks.
Yeah. So you need to do extra things, but not extra things in the gym.
No.
You need to do extra things outside of the gym. Doing extra in the gym is going to hinder you.
Yeah.
It's going to get in your way, and your strength might even decrease or like definitely plateau out.
Absolutely.
I know I've seen people do that. Like, oh man, I'm not putting on strength the way I should. I'm going to try to max out every day. Like, no, you can't do that.
No. And I think the important thing here to note is some days are going to be easy. Some days you're going to walk in and you're going to feel like you didn't do anything. And some days are going to be very difficult and you're not sure if you're going to make them through. Take the easy days and say, wow, that was great. Right. I feel on top of the world. Take the hard days and say, wow, that was really difficult. I'm glad I made it through. But don't try to make every day a hard day.
Right. Absolutely. You can't go 100% every single day.
No. The next thing is something Kristin's a big advocate of.
Oh, Oh yeah, planning recovery and prehab / rehab, depending on your body. But yeah, so recovery is where I've really been able to dial things in for myself. That's I can't train any more than what I'm following my program to a T. I give it my all every day. I've done that work. The things that I can control outside of that are my recovery, though.
Absolutely.
Which is where you really build your strength, right? This is you're beating yourself up in the gym, and then it's your rest days and your recovery time where your strength is actually building back up.
Yep.
So whether that's like getting a lot of sleep is really, really important. You just posted up a study on our blog about sleep. And I think that
sleep and cognition, basically it came down to if you get less than 7 hours of sleep and you try to perform at an elite level, they use rugby players in this case, it was just your cognition decreased so much.
Yeah.
That it was almost pointless.
Right. So don't be getting less than 7 hours of sleep. I think ideal for athletes is 9 to 10 hours of sleep. Which is hard. Like I'll admit, like my internal alarm clock wakes me up between 6:30 and 7 every morning. So I have to go to bed early. And because it doesn't matter what time I go to bed, that's when my body wakes me up. So, cause that's what happens when you get older. Can't sleep till 11 anymore. I miss those days.
Whoopsies.
But yeah, so really in your recovery, if you're not allowing for sufficient recovery, that's going to lead to overtraining symptoms.
Absolutely.
So I like to think of like overtraining is not really overtraining. It's under recovery, and it's everyone can handle different levels, right? So you can get really horribly overtrained because there's no possible way your body can recover to the point it needs to recover for you to be training at that level for that long.
Yep.
Which definitely happened to me. We talked about that in another episode. And that put me out for months. Like I'm just now back to the level I was at before that happened. And that was almost a year ago.
Yeah. So this also goes back to the don't do too much. So don't like push yourself to, not saying Kristin did. She was just following her programming, but it was just too much. And when you do too much and you don't allow for enough time to recover, your body's going to fail. Okay. Your body's just going to be like, yo, moron, I need to stop. Like,
right. Well, and
I can't do this.
And then that's what puts you at risk for injury.
And a lot of people do that on top of cutting. So if you can imagine you're under recovered, which a lot of your recovery comes from eating, as we talked about in our previous episode about how not all goals need to be cutting or bulking, like just eat to recover, eat to perform, because your body is going to break down without it.
Right. And that's why people, if you've ever heard someone say that being in a caloric deficit makes you more susceptible to injury, that's why. Because when you're in a caloric deficit, your body is not recovering optimally. It can't. You're not giving it what it needs to recover optimally. So that's why we say like you don't be cutting all the time, because you're not going to put on strength. You're going to make yourself more at risk for injury. And it has to do with the recovery.
So if you think of your body as like a pyramid, right? Everything that goes on in your body that your body needs basic functions to survive is the base of your pyramid.
Yep.
Your body will make sure that base is covered first, including like getting enough glucose to your brain, making sure all your little biochemical reactions in your body are working properly, your heart's pumping, you're breathing, like those things are going to get the priority. And then things on top of that, like building muscle, is going to take less of a priority. So if you think of filling that pyramid with calories, if you're just eating enough calories to fill the bottom of that pyramid, getting to the point that your body's putting on strength is not going to happen, because your body just simply does not have the resources.
Yeah, it can't prioritize that over breathing and keeping you alive.
Yeah, it won't do
those
that.
Things.
So your muscles will be broken down, and there won't be a whole lot of energy allocated for them to be rebuilt. And so if you are always in a caloric deficit, you're not letting your body be a body and also put on muscle.
Right. You're just asking too much of it.
Yeah.
That's not to say that caloric deficits can't be successful. It's just that they need to be done appropriately. They need to be timed correctly. They can definitely be done. It's just there's a time and a place for them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, nutrition, obviously, you guys know this. Nutrition is the reason I am so interested in nutrition and am a nutrition coach and have my nutrition so dialed in is because of the recovery aspect of nutrition is huge. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, which is crazy to me. And so we're huge advocates of like getting your nutrition on point for your goals. If you're eating at maintenance in a caloric balance just to be, maintain your weight or whatever, it's not just about your weight. It's about how you are recovering. And so you have to have that dialed in. You can't just say, oh, calorie in, calorie out. And like, oops, well, I ate like an asshole today and then I didn't really eat anything tomorrow. Like it doesn't
work that way.
Yeah. You need to have that dialed in every day so that you're giving your body what it needs to recover. And I have seen athletes who I've coached so many athletes that came to me like they're past the beginner stage, they're intermediate, they realize that they need to kind of now start dialing things in, and we'll dial in their nutrition and it's almost like they get beginner gains again. It's crazy the amount of strength that they can put on when they start to really dial that stuff in. And that is, I think, the most fun thing for me as a coach is to watch that happen and like see their excitement, like, holy cow, there's something to this. Like, yeah, if you give your body what it needs, it will reward you. And it's awesome.
Well, just going back to like your body itself, like we cannot control how our body decides to prioritize things.
Yeah.
That's not something we can say, hey, body, I don't want you to make my brain function today. I'd rather you put on muscle. But what we can control is what we put in our bodies and how long we let our bodies rest. So if you think of the variables you can control and you are not controlling those variables, you are not optimizing your strength gains. But it's a very easy fix, right? Like go to bed a little earlier. I know it's difficult. I know getting 9 hours can be difficult, especially if you work a full-time job, but like do everything you can or allow yourself to sleep in on the weekends.
Or take naps. Naps are really helpful too.
Naps are great. Like make sure you're giving your body what it needs in terms of sleeping, and then make sure that you are eating enough. This is why we created the Eat for Strength courses, because we want you to learn how to just feed your body so you can get all the normal biological stuff out of the way and you can have that extra good stuff to help you put on strength and to recover.
Absolutely. I could not have said that better myself.
Thank you. I practiced it. So, and then the last thing that I think is obvious, but it needs to be said, is you need to have a structured training program. If you're just picking random things or you're program hopping, you're not going to see very structured or very good increases in strength.
Yeah.
There's a reason programs are written the way that they're written. If they're written well, they are trying to peak you certain times throughout the year. They're trying to let your body recover maybe through a hypertrophy phase. Like there are reasons a program is written the way that it's written. And if you are not following a program, or you're doing max out every day, or you're doing squat every day, like there's nothing wrong with squatting every day as long as everything else is under control.
Right.
So either find yourself a good coach or find yourself a good program to follow.
I remember the first time I ever followed a program. It was life-changing. My friend Jason had just finished his master's degree in exercise science, and this was like his master's thesis was this huge year-long program basically with macrocycles and mesocycles. And I said, I want to do a powerlifting meet, and I never ended up doing it, but he gave me the programming, and I can't remember what exactly happened during that period of time where that didn't come together. But at any rate, I followed the program for quite a while, and I was like, oh, this is what it's like to follow a program.
Yes.
Holy cow. Like I was putting on strength like crazy and it was awesome. And I was feeling good because I'm the type of person who if you guys follow me on social media, you've probably heard me say like, I can't go by feel.
No.
Mary figured this out when she coached me for my first meet. Like I can't go by feel. Like honestly, 280 pounds or 380 pounds for a deadlift, they kind of feel pretty damn close to each other for me. It's just a matter of like the speed at which I pull it, or did I successfully get it off the ground?
Right.
They honestly feel really similar. I cannot go by feel. Everything feels hard as shit. So
she needs numbers.
So, right. So once I finally had percentages to be going off of, I saw huge changes.
Mm-hmm. So if you're not following a program, get yourself on the program.
We have a free 10-week strength program on our site. Yeah. So it's totally free.
That one's more like a kind of like a hypertrophy strength program. Okay. It's like a mix. And then we've also got the peaking program. So ideally, you could probably use that 10-week strength cycle and then get the peaking program if you wanted to peak for a meet.
Mm-hmm. Or just to test your maxes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The next thing that we want to talk about is things that might impede or hold back your strength gains.
Yeah. We get the question all the time, like, how much cardio is too much cardio where I'm not going to get the strength gains?
My answer is always any cardio is too much cardio. But that's not scientifically proven. That's just me.
Right. Well, okay. So there is some research to show that like if you want to improve your overall work capacity, which is going to be helpful for things like maxing out and meets.
Yeah.
So you need to build your overall work capacity. Mm-hmm. That can be done through cardio, but it doesn't have to be traditional cardio. Mm-hmm. It could be having less rest time between your main lifts or less rest time between your accessory lifts. Or working on like some GPP. You can do some HIIT training, but it needs to be done during certain cycles of your training. It shouldn't be done during like a hard strength building cycle. Shouldn't be done when you're peaking for a meet for sure. And it shouldn't be done around your strength training. Like it needs to be either after you're done training or on off days.
Yeah. And don't do like HIIT sessions are great because they're designed to be short.
Right.
So we're talking 10 minutes of maybe like a minute sprint and a minute rest. So total of 5 minutes working set. Mm-hmm. And then you're done. So if you're doing like a 45-minute HIIT session.
Oh my gosh. Who would do 45 minutes of HIIT? That makes me want to throw up.
Have you ever watched late night TV?
No, because I go to bed at 9.
That's what they sell. So if you are doing just like a 10-minute thing, like
like P90X,
like P90X.
Oh, gross!
Yeah, those are great if you want to just have general fitness, and if you want to lose weight, those are great. But for strength training, they're not ideal. So 10 minutes on a minute, off a minute, on 30 seconds, off a minute, like something like that.
Yeah, like on an Airdyne or a rower, or even like sled drags and sled pulls and pushes. Mm-hmm. Those are great. Even
sprints if you're feeling crazy.
If you feel really crazy, some sprints. I actually do kind of love me some sprints.
Sprints can be a little bit exhilarating, but so if you do like the longer version of a HIIT, they're likely high impact, so you got to think of your joint health.
Right.
It might require you to eat more food to keep up your recovery because you're doing that much extra on top of what you're already doing. Like I said, it's likely done as a method of weight loss. So a lot of people who are cutting, who want to stay strong, they do some type of HIIT. Not all coaches implement cardio when they're doing nutrition coaching, but some nutrition coaches will give you some cardio, and whether it's steady state or HIIT, it's just different.
I think in terms of weight loss, if we want to add in cardio for weight loss and you're a strength athlete, I think staying in the low intensity steady state or hiking. Moderate intensity, hiking would be a great one. Walking is a great one. A 5-mile run would not be a great one. Yeah. Yep. I think that's going to break things down too much. Yeah. So
if you want to do cardio, that's fine. Try to keep it away from your training, after training, or on rest days.
Yeah.
Next thing is going to be, as we said, recovery. If you're not doing enough recovery, it's going to impede your strength gains. And then we talked about this before, but alcohol.
Alcohol hinders your recovery without a doubt.
And we're not saying don't drink. We're not saying like you can't have fun, but if your goals are to qualify for a meet and that means you need to be recovered and you're drinking alcohol, you're not going to be as recovered as if you didn't drink.
Yep. And honestly, that's why I just made a post a little bit ago. Like I pretty much since the first of the year don't drink. I say that, but I'll have like a drink. Maybe once a month or every couple weeks. But I do it I make sure if Friday's my last training day of the week, I'll do that on Saturday. And then I don't train again till Monday. And I have like maybe if I'm feeling crazy, 2 drinks. But the reason that I cut back on my drinking, because I was definitely drinking more than that. I enjoy alcohol. Like I love a good bourbon. Oh my gosh, I love bourbon. I don't drink to like get hammered and drunk, but like go out with friends and have fun and hang out on the lake and whatever. Like alcohol seems to go hand in hand with that. And it was difficult for me, but I had to make that decision. I can't train as hard as I want to train because I'm not recovering because of alcohol.
Yep.
It didn't fit my goals. So I pretty much cut it out. And honestly, it's fine. It's fine. I didn't draw the hard line. Like I'm not drinking ever. Cause I know that's ridiculous. That's like me saying I'm not going to ever eat ice cream. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So just keep a log of your alcohol consumption. And if you notice you're drinking a lot and you have big goals coming up, just cut it back. I mean, there's going to be times in life you can drink every day if you want. And then there's going to be times in life that you probably shouldn't.
I agree. Totally. And like we said, like constantly cutting for me is definitely going to hinder your strength gains. Also, one thing that's really interesting that I have seen posted, and I know Stacy has talked to me about, is doing too many meets.
Yeah.
Doing too many meets in a year, because the period, like the peaking period, when you're peaking for a meet, you're not gaining strength. You're just trying to get yourself ready for the strength that you've already built. And then meets are also really, in powerlifting especially, meets are really hard on your body. It's very taxing.
Yep.
So you need, I mean, even a month after a meet, you still might be recovering a little bit. But for sure, like for 2 weeks, your body's still recovering.
Yeah. If you think of like the peaking program that we have, it's a 5-week peaking program. One of those weeks being meet week. And then if you add a week on after that, that's 6 weeks of peaking and a week of recovery. And if you do that twice a year, well, that's already 12 weeks. That's 3 months.
So if you're competing 4-5 times a year, you're not building. There's a lot of time that you're not building.
All you're doing is peaking. Really, this is how it should look. You should have a hypertrophy cycle. You should move into some type of strength cycle. Then you're going to peak. Then you're going to move back into hypertrophy cycle to let your body kind of recover, as Kristin said. Now, this could be a couple weeks. It could be a couple months, just depending on what you need. Then you go back into a strength cycle. And here you can either peak again and have another meet, or you can do a strength cycle, test maxes, or just go really heavy and then dial it back down.
Do another strength cycle.
But in that's like 2 meets, and that's almost a full year.
Right.
So just keep in mind, not like killing it. Meets are fun. Don't get me wrong.
Fun.
But there's other ways you can participate in meets without participating in meets. They always need volunteers. Yes. They always need spotters. Like they always need people who know what they're doing to be there and help. And if you just want to go experience a meet, like go celebrate other people. It's fantastic. but don't be peaking for 6 meets in a year. That's absurd.
Right. Or one thing that you can do that I've done, and it's mentally very difficult for me to do, so I choose not to do it now, is train through a meet. So when I first started competing in Olympic weightlifting, I wanted the experience of competing because for me, mentally, I need to have experience with it. Mm-hmm. So I did do a lot of meets, but there were several meets that I trained through. It was literally just like, would have been like a max out Saturday session.
Or a heavy day.
Exactly. Or a heavy day. So I wasn't going to PR at those meets because I hadn't peaked. Mm-hmm. I was, it was basically just a training day. And I was fine with that. I didn't care. Mm-hmm. But now at the level I'm at, I don't want to do a meet unless I'm going to be hitting PRs. So we choose to keep my competitions to twice a year.
Yeah. Which is completely fine. And if you want to train through a meet, that's fine. But keep in mind, meets are kind of expensive. So
yeah, depending. Powerlifting meets tend to be more expensive than weightlifting meets. Like weightlifting meets are like usually like $25-$30.
It depends.
Depending on who the meet director is.
Yeah. So if first you have to be part of the club, which is the USAW or just like USAPL membership, which can be $90, and then the meets can range from $30 to $70. So if you're a cheapo beepo like me, I just do a heavy day in my garage.
There you go.
And then just general nutrition. If you don't have your general nutrition dialed in, you're going to impede your strength gains.
Definitely.
So the last thing we want to say about strength gains don't happen overnight is there tends to be a few lifters or, a handful of people that seem to come on the scene out of nowhere and make exceptional, like more than beginner gains consistently for years and years. And if they are doing that, then there's likely one thing going on. They're taking some type of extra something to get them there. And it's usually some type of PED or performance enhancing drug, which we haven't done an episode on this yet, but we will.
It's coming.
I don't have a problem if you're on a performance enhancing drug. Kristin does not have a problem with it.
As long as your federation allows it.
As long as you're not doing it illegally. If you're in a tested federation, you're like, I'm going to get really strong using a drug and then get off it just so I can win.
Don't be a cheater. Don't be a cheater.
If your federation allows it and you're willing to go through that and put your body through that, kudos to you. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. It's
your body, it's your life, that's your decision. But I think it's we just have to be cautious not to compare ourselves to other people for tons of reasons. One of the reasons is that there are people that are on performance enhancing drugs that you don't know that they're on performance enhancing drugs. And so that is dangerous to be comparing yourself to that person. But there's other reasons why you shouldn't be comparing yourself. Maybe someone didn't have things dialed in and now they're starting to dial in. They're not drinking, they're sleeping, their nutrition, I talked about with some of my athletes, their strength gains go through the roof when we dial in their nutrition and their timing and all that stuff. So if you already had all that stuff dialed in and then someone does that and they get stronger, sorry, so I think it's just so important not to compare yourself to anyone. And then also the other way, if you're a lot stronger than other people, not looking at other people who are not as strong, oh, I'm so much better. You don't know what's going on in that person's life.
Yeah.
So don't compare yourself to them either because they're doing the best that they can for what's going on in their life. And maybe your situation is set up a little bit better. For us, I have 12 hours of my week that is very rigid and I can't change. And those are my times in my office treating patients. But the rest of my daily schedule is pretty flexible. So I have the ability to train at a level and recover at a level that someone who is tied to a desk 70 hours a week and has 3 kids can't train at my level.
Right.
Compare yourself to who you were a year ago or yesterday, not to other people.
Someone else, yeah.
Yep.
And the other thing I will say, because Kristin does look very jacked, I will say.
Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome. She does get accused of being on drugs
I have been accused of being on drugs, and it fucking sucks. I will just say that.
Don't go around and be like, well, she looks really jacked, so she must be on drugs.
Yeah, or, oh, she's stronger than me. She must be on drugs.
Mm-hmm. Just don't pay attention. Put your blinders on.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do. Celebrate them. If they are in a federation and they're on drugs and they're cheating, that just speaks worlds of their character. But if they're in a federation that allows it and they're on it, like,
yeah,
that's fine.
Right. And that's the other thing is like, why do we care what anyone else is doing? Like, why do we, unless they're cheating, and then that's totally unfair. But like, I've been accused of being on drugs by people that don't even lift really.
Yeah.
And I'm like, excuse me. Like, I will say, I'm not sure, well, maybe behind my back, but I'm not sure that anyone that actually does lift has accused me of being on drugs. But people that don't lift or don't compete, that has happened. Like, are you on steroids? Like,
because they just
I just work really fucking hard.
It's the work they don't get.
Yeah, and usually they're people that aren't willing to put in the amount of work.
Usually casual gym goers,
or like they're not willing to put in the amount of work just in life to get to the next level. And so anyway, yeah, just stay in your lane and pay attention to yourself.
Mm-hmm. You do you.
And do you.
And celebrate people when they need to be celebrated. That's it.
Absolutely. Share the love.
Share. Ugh. All right.
Mary's doesn't like love.
Oh, feels. Okay. That's it.
That's it.
So we mentioned earlier about the research. If you guys are interested in learning more about some of the research that's out there, we do article summaries periodically through our Facebook group page and on the website through our blog. So go join our Facebook group page, Female Strength Academy. And if you like this shirt that I'm wearing, strong as fuck, strong AF. Mm-hmm. We still have some available on the site. So go check it out if you want one of these.
T-shirts and tapes.
They're very soft. I like them a lot. And I'm picky about shirts. Kristen can attest.
Very picky.
Yeah. That's it.
All right. Well, this has been fun, and we will talk to you in 2 weeks.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.